Welcome, welcome, my friends, to another edition of More Bad News, brought to you as always by Camel Cigarettes. Take the Camels Challenge, smoke Camels for 30 days, and see for yourself what a difference Camels can make in your life. Is there a hole in your life? Fill it with Camels. Take it from Grandpa. If I was young enough, I'd be smoking Camels and drinking Jack Daniels. I can't do that any longer, but maybe you can. So take the Camels Challenge for Grandpa's sake. Especially after I'm gone, you can remember me with a pack of Camels, as I did for a long time in remembrance of my mom. There came a time when I had to stop smoking. I was never really a committed smoker, so there was long periods of time when I would stop. But in remembrance of my mother, at her yahrzeit, I would often buy a pack of Camels, and I would smoke one pack over the month after her yahrzeit. But we usually like one a day in the morning. And really, if I managed to get 3 or 4 tokes of a cigarette, because when you're not smoking them, they just knock you for a loop. So, but I did that because in remembrance of the many mornings that I spent with my mother towards the end of her life in her kitchen with black coffee and Salem or Newports. She always smoked menthols. I never liked menthols, but yeah, I smoked whatever my mother was smoking. Uh, and I've told the story before, but it's worth repeating that I was sitting around talking to her after her first heart attack, and she told me that the young doctor scolded her, saying, Esther, if you don't stop smoking, you're going to die. And my mother, without skipping a beat, replied, and if I stop smoking, I won't die. So listen up, folks. Smoking will kill you, but you're going to die anyway. Well, friends, it's been another week of very bad news. Um, Fires everywhere, but the one that broke my heart was the fire that consumed Jasper in Alberta, British Columbia. But I just, um, Karen and I took a vacation there 2016, 17, I don't, it's 6, 7 years ago. And it just, it's so memorable. But I remember um, one day driving, our goal was to drive away from the smoke. And we drove straight away from the smoke, and we finally got away from all of the smoke, and it was glorious. On one side of the road there were these cliffs, and there were the white mountain goats, precariously on these cliffs, and there was a grizzly mama grizzly with her babies, and there was, just, I mean, it was unbelievable to be able to escape the smoke while we were in Canada on our vacation. But generally speaking, it was gorgeous anyway. The smoke wasn't always there. It came and it went. And we saw the glaciers. We had come to say really goodbye to the glaciers. That was my thought. And indeed, we were completely losing them. We took the ride along the Icefield Parkway and went up to the Columbia Icefield. And it's extraordinary when you see how much ice has melted. So there was the fire broke out, and 2 days warning they had. The fire was headed for Jasper, so they had 2 days. Jasper is just this gorgeous little town that's been there forever, 25,000 people population. And they had enough time, they had 2 days warning, they had enough time to evacuate everybody from the city, but they could not save the city. They couldn't stop the fire. And it reminded me of Paradise, California. The same thing happened. Fire breaks out. You live in a city of 25,000 or so. You live in a small town, and here's the fact is that there is no protection from these fires. They may be able to get you out before you burn to death, but they can't stop the fires from spreading. The fires are spreading everywhere around the earth. There's fires burning all the time, and just consuming the tree cover of this planet, and consuming the drying out the permafrost that is drying in the Arctic. It's terrifying to contemplate, but fortunately, we don't have to think about it unless the smoke comes, this way. And then you have to close your windows and turn on your Corsi fans in order to maintain a safe internal environment for breathing. Which brings me, I want to shout out this week. I had a student drop by, and shout out to Julie, and she made me these. I don't know whether you can see it. It's there you go. I think you'll be able to see that. It's a pin with the iconic symbol of academic freedom. I'm wearing my space helmet and N95 mask, and this is going to be available for all of my Patreon members. And if you'd like to find out how to become a Patreon member, begin by reading Kafka's Before the Law. And when you're done with that, just get in line at the door that has your name on it. Let me see. All right, so there was also last week, the lead editorial in Science Magazine was all about the threat to academic freedom. Friends, I know you're not going to be able to believe this, but academic freedom is under assault. The editorial began, quote, "It's sobering to remember that the principle of academic freedom scarcely existed in the United States in the 20th century. When the firing of a Stanford University professor over his populist political views caused a public uproar. So that in the early 20th century, a populist professor at Stanford University, a very conservative school, was fired, and that incident led to the formation of the American Association of University Professors, the AAUP, which released a statement on the principles of academic freedom and tenure in 1940. The concept was soon tested in the 1950s when Senate committees investigating dozens of academics, including Nobel laureate Linus Pauling, for holding un-American views. And it took a string of Supreme Court cases upholding academic freedom and public censure of Senator Joseph McCarthy to bring this fraught chapter of American history to an end. You can imagine how the Supreme Court would react to a string of challenges now to academic freedom. So Congress is now going after academics who are studying misinformation and disinformation on the internet, because these academics are actually, what they're trying to do is stifle conservative voices. And that brings us to Kamala, our hope for a brighter future. Now, all I can say is that my father said many, many times, we live in hope. And believe me, the world is watching. Some hopeful that the Republicans will sweep the next election, and others fearful of the same thing. The consequences are enormous for NATO, Ukraine, millions of homeless refugees, women, and God bless them, the poor, who, as you know, are always with us. What we have before us is a choice between a psychopathic narcissist who is still who is showing unmistakable signs of dementia, but is still leading a movement to ensure that America remains firmly in the hands of white Christians, as God had made abundantly clear that he wanted America, that America was the fulfillment of God's prophecy. From George Washington to Donald Trump, the hand of God is obvious. It's all spelled out in this book, America's Providential History. And yes, that's George Washington there, deeply devout Christian, asking God for direction. Fact check, Washington's Christianity was entirely pro forma. Washington was surrounded by people like Hamilton, Jefferson, and Madison, who believed religion's impact on politics was entirely negative. They believed that a wall needed to be constructed to protect civil government from religious prejudice. When Jefferson became governor of Virginia, he fired the professor of theology at the University of Virginia because he believed that the state had no business teaching religion. If you want to see what place religion had in Washington's life, just consider the people who are around him at his deathbed: Martha, his physician and personal friend, and his personal secretary. No one thought to call a minister. But the providential history was written by two Texas Republicans, and everyone, all of the founding fathers were religious, and you could just see the hand of God in everything that was happening, so that God hardened the hearts of the British Parliament, and it was in order to demonstrate God's greatness that he the American Revolution, clearly you could see the hand of God in this revolution. And so God wanted to manifest himself, so that he got the British to act in a way that was totally against their interests and made no sense at all. You have to ask yourself, why did the British push the Americans to rebel? So will a majority of Americans vote for a Black woman with a Jewish husband? Excuse me, we're talking about America, the land that God gave to white Christians. The Democrats are a godless party that wants to destroy all of what we got by fair and square. Well, surely the choice is yours, and I'm glad it helps some folks to get their hopes up. But as you already know, I'm beyond this election. Which brings me to my solution, which I've been loath to present. But we need a political party to sweep into power on a platform of making America the land of refuge for all those who need a place where they can live without fear and feed their children. We, after all, are primarily responsible for the suffering, so we should accept responsibility for the victims. We should have a maximum allowance policy aimed at admitting refugees from all over the world as quickly as possible. The goal would be to completely overwhelm state and local abilities to deal with the crisis, but somehow we would manage. And each wave of refugees would reinforce our determination to be a refuge for all the victims of our greed. My party would also immediately admit Ukraine to NATO, causing rapid mobilization of all NATO forces with the goal of putting 1 million soldiers on Russia's border, and most importantly, immediately and without warning, launching an all-out thermonuclear assault on Russia and China. Israel would launch a separate nuclear assault on Iran. In the end, there would be far fewer refugees for us to have to help. And when the great struggle between good and evil is complete, the redemption of man will also be complete. So this week, I'm reading this book. I'm on a Yerushalmi kick here. There's Jewish history, Zachor, which is the Hebrew word for remember, Jewish history and Jewish memory. And so I've been thinking about memory, history, and reality. Judaism is, I believe, unique in commanding that some things be remembered. This is the standard traditional siddur, and after at the end of the morning services, there's this place over here where they have the things that you're supposed to remember every day. So it says here that the Torah commands that 6 events be remembered always. Consequently, some authorities maintain that these verses containing this commandment should be read daily. And of course, there's remember the Exodus of Egypt, remember receiving the Torah at Mount Sinai, remember Amalek's attack against you, remember the golden calf, remember Miriam, and remember the Sabbath. Those are the 6 things that explicitly in the Torah it says, Zachar, remember this. So, and with Amalek attacked the Israelites when they were coming out of Egypt and returning to Mesopotamia. And so God commanded, they attacked you when you were weak and weary, and they attacked you from the rear, killing your women and your children. So remember what Amalek did to you, and you are Timcha et Zecher Amalek, blot out the memory of Amalek from beneath the heavens. So here we are 4,000 years later, reading every day, reminding ourselves that we have to blot out the memory of Amalek. And I dare say that had we not been doing this 4,000 years on, no one would remember Amalek. Um, uh, so uh, one of the things that Yerushalmi points out is that uh, you didn't have really Jewish history until the modern period, perhaps beginning with the Haskalah, 1700s. And Yerushalmi's teacher, Professor Salo Baron, had held the first chair in modern Jewish history in a Western university anywhere in the world. So Jewish history is really a modern invention. Jewish memory, on the other hand, is separate from history. We are commanded to remember the Exodus, but what we remember is not history. It's the memory of a story we told, a never-ending story that is retold every year and is incumbent upon every Jew to remember leaving Egypt, to remember to block out the memory of Amalek. So I've been thinking about the difference between my memories and my history. My history I have meticulously recorded. I have over 70 file drawers filled with the details of my history. My memory is much more limited. And when I'm gone, neither my memory nor my history will remain. I don't find that particularly difficult to live with. In fact, I have taken the biblical command to blot out the memory of Amalek to heart. And I've blotted out most of the memories of my personal suffering and abuse. And I've long since forgiven myself for any of the abuse that I heaped on others, including animals. I must admit that I killed small things simply because they were on the wall in front of me. I mean, so many of my friends still have regrets. They remember being bullied and humiliated, or they remember things that they did which they are profoundly sorry for. It resembles PTSD. The memory haunts you and you can't repress it. I'm blessed with the ability to forget even the world around me. So I'm grateful for my traumatic brain injuries. And I can sing along with Simon and Garfunkel, the boxer, I am leaving, but the fighter still remains. So here I am, folks, leaving, but still here. The final thing I wanted to do is give a final shout out to Julie. Thank you very much for the pin. With that, I will see you next week. Take the Camel's Challenge in Yirtzeh Hashem. God willing, we'll have another show next week.